Okay, time for another 1999 flavored R-rated review. Today's discourse will dissect Why I'm Too Dumb for Literature, further realized by Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire. This podcast unofficially brought to you by Necco Wafers. Necco Wafers was proud to create the first candy out of an original mixture of drywall and powdered sugar. The perfect gift for someone who slept with your sister, or ruined a marriage, or even a friend's kid that you hate. For a gift that destroys families, nothing safer than Necco Wafers. Lessons learned from the ligature of literature. I'm not sure why I keep doing this to myself. I've reviewed 2 literature books on here, and I really didn't enjoy either one. How to explain this book? It's about a guy who edits and analyzes the poem of another guy who died. Also, the editor was sort of obsessed with the writer of the poem in a Mark Wahlberg, Fear, kind of creepy way. Also, he may have killed him. Also, they may actually be the same person, but that person is clinically insane. Also, who cares? Simultaneously, one of the best and worst books I've ever read. The first 20 or so pages are mind-blowing. I've never seen English wielded so impeccably, creatively, vividly, and maybe pretentiously. Listen to this passage from page 16. Apart from the glamorous neighborhood, the Goldsworthian chateau, as I was soon to discover, had little to recommend it. The heating system was a farce, depending as it did on registers in the floor wherefrom the tepid exhalations of a throbbing and groaning basement furnace were transmitted to the rooms with the faintness of a moribund's last breath. By occluding the apertures upstairs, I attempted to give more energy to the register in the living room, but its climate proved to be incurably vitiated. So basically he's saying the house is cold and isn't heated properly, and he tried to warm it up. His language is daunting and overly verbose, but it feels natural. Apparently the guy was a bit of a genius, writing in 3 languages, and according to Wikipedia, is a composer of chess problems. So I'm sure when he's slinging around these 14-point Scrabble words, it's no big deal for him. Here's another delicious passage from page 17. His laconic suggestion that I try the pork amused me. I am a strict vegetarian, and I like to cook my own meals. Consuming something that had been handled by a fellow creature was, I explained to the rubicund convives, as repulsive to me as eating any creature, and that would include, lowering my voice, the pulpish, pony-tailed girl student who served us and licked her pencil. Moreover, I had already finished the fruit brought with me in my briefcase, so I would content myself, I said, with a bottle of good college ale. My free and simple demeanor set everybody at ease. The usual questions were fired at me about eggnogs and milkshakes, being or not being acceptable to one of my persuasion. Shade said that with him it was the other way around. He must make a definite effort to partake of a vegetable. Beginning a salad was to him like stepping into seawater on a chilly day, and he had always to brace himself in order to attack the fortress of an apple. What the fuck is a rubicund convive? I don't know, but it sounds great. I'm utterly enthralled with this paragraph. I laughed out loud at multiple points. The pulpous girl student who licked her pencil, his free and simple demeanor, and the usual questions about eggnog. This is a special kind of funny to me. It's a kind of delicious literary irony that very few authors I've read wield, and I'll always be impressed with this passage. The fortress of an apple. What a fucking grand way of describing an apple. Absolutely love it. And I also thought it was really neat how he had all these 15-letter words to describe everything, but multiple times in the story refers to his car as a powerful machine, as if to say sports cars are not my expertise, I'm a learned man. I thought that was a clever touch. But it's like the highs and lows of love. You meet a girl, she's stunning, she speaks eloquently, mysteriously, you're enraptured. Then a few weeks later, the cracks start to show. She wears too much makeup, she sneezes a lot, she nervously cackles when she combs her hair, she gargles her morning coffee, and she may have drowned one of her kids in a bathtub. So, sadly for me, the honeymoon period was over. Next, I trudged drearily through the 999-line poem, which, to be fair to Nabokov, whatever, I've never really enjoyed poetry anyway. It's the last, 80% of the book that for me was pure torture. Zembla, you will forever haunt me. So he's supposed to be analyzing the poetry, and when he actually does that, it's okay. But what he really does is use the analyzing as an excuse to go off on these 12-page long tangents about Zembla, a country that he's fabricated with its own culture, royal family, history, etc., all of which is epically fucking boring. Not only am I not smart enough to understand what he's trying to do here, but I don't want to understand. I just want it to go away forever. This part of the book had me quickly traversing from painful confusion to bamboozlement, to frustrated disinterest, to active hatred. It's almost as if he knows it himself, as he complains on page 112 in a convenient piece of irony about the author of the poem's obfuscation. Line 137, lemniscate, a unicursal bicircular quartic, says my weary old dictionary. I cannot understand what this has to do with bicycling, and suspect that Shade's phrase has no real meaning. As other poets before him, he seems to have fallen here under the spell of misleading euphony. Well, if you substitute bicycling with the story, Shade with Nabokov, and phrase with the book, you pretty much have an accurate description of my feelings. I cannot understand what this has to do with the story, and suspect that Nabokov's book has no real meaning. A friend of mine put it succinctly. This is a book about how good Nabokov is at writing. As I find the 5-star system a bit limiting, I like to use my arbitrary rating system, SLICK, which stands for Story, Language, Ideas, and Characters on a 10-point scale. Here's how I rated Pale Fire. For story, I gave it a 1. A guy wrote a poem and then died? Or did he? For language, I gave it an 8. Nabokov's writing is immense, which can be mind-altering in both good and bad ways. When it's working, it's like nothing I've ever read before. When it's not, it's hard to explain because I just skip it. For ideas, I gave it a 6. I'm just going to pretend like I'm too stupid to figure out what he's trying to pull off here. For characters, I gave it a 1. Does this book have characters? Pretty sure it's all Nabokov's psyche. I also strive for a contrived comparison with every book. This book is the first time you sip a rich and rewarding Riesling. You think to yourself, holy shit, can wine really taste like this? This is incredible. But if you tried drinking Riesling for 2 hours straight, 5 days a week, you would soon feel ill at its cloying sweetness. And that's how I felt about this book. The first few sips of the Nabokov Riesling were divine, intoxicating, followed swiftly by the pains of alcoholic Zembla poisoning. If you like this podcast, give it a thumbs up, share, follow, burn it onto a blank CD, and then chuck it at your friend. And tune in next week for another episode of R-Rated Reviews.